All right, hello and welcome to Make Weird Music's interview with the great John Stix, formerly of Guitar for the Practicing Musician. Many of us here at Make Weird Music, were Guitar for the Practicing Musician was a sort of foundational publication. It really was a magazine that was dedicated to not just giving you the latest in rock and the latest, hot licks and things and transcriptions, but also a more creative perspective from their staff of writers as well as their staff of columnists. Guitar for the Practicing Musician was, I believe, the first magazine to feature Steve Vai, Steve Morse, Reeves Gabrels, Alex Skolnick, Jeff Young, and so many of the people that are in the world of make music. What's that?
Joe Satriani did his
So
first column.
Satriani as well, and Billy Sheehan, so many more terrific players. So I just wanted, I had decided to get together with John Stix. I found his email address and wanted to pepper him with questions about his tenure at Guitar for the Practicing Musician, which I believe, John, so you were there from 83 to 95 at the
Yes,
magazine?
yes. Guitar for the Practicing Musician was born on May 2nd, 1983. Reason I know that is my first child was born on May 1st. So the day after my child was born, we started Guitar for the Practicing Musician at Cherry Lane Music. It was myself and my co-editor in chief and co-heart, Bruce Pollock.
Hmm.
And I had a rock music magazine background with the rockers and with guitar. I was a guitar geek.
Okay.
Bruce uh, was an award-winning writer for magazines and newspapers. I mean, it was certainly a step above me, or a couple steps above me, in
Mhm.
terms of putting together magazines. And he's going to interview Bruce Springsteen. You
Yeah.
know, well before Guitar Magazine, he was a big time writer, and so he knew the magazine business, and he loved music right through the '60s in particular.
Yeah.
I was the guitar geek. The two of us were hired separately. We met. We never had a conversation about who was going to do what. Not once. It was like the drummers of the Allman Brothers band. They never discussed how it worked. They just started working.
Yeah, because you were interviewing a lot of people. Your name was was the byline a lot
I,
of the
I,
time.
I had done stuff for many magazines, including Guitar Player. I had founded Guitar World.
Oh, really? I don't think I knew that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's
And,
different.
I was working at Circus Magazine, and the ad director there uh, knew Harris Publications. And he
Okay.
brought me into Harris Publications, and he said, uh, "Is there room for another magazine?" And I went in and I said, "Yes, there's room for one with attitude. There's room for one with rock energy. There's room for one with color." See, the thing about Guitar Player magazine, which was the Bible,
Yeah.
everything was in black and white except for the ads.
Mm.
It covered Segovia, Merle Travis,
Hmm.
Powder, and Joe Pass, and Terry Kath and Jimi Hendrix and Duane Allman.
Hmm.
So the idea behind originally Guitar World is that we would have a lot more rock energy,
Yeah.
color. And then the idea behind Guitar for the Practicing Musician is uh, I had worked for a Japanese magazine called Player Magazine.
Okay.
What happens is I had done a bunch of writing. I was very, very lucky in my own writing career. The very first thing I had befriended a wonderful jazz piano player named Chick Corea.
Mm. Yes. Some jazz, yeah, some pianist.
I was hanging with them. He asked me to be his road manager when I realized he just wanted me to drive the car,
Ah,
drive him around. I didn't want
oh,
to do
yeah.
that. But the band at the time was Chick Corea, Stanley Clark, Bill Connors, Mingo Lewis, and Steve Gadd.
Oh, wow.
They actually recorded the first electric,
Electric band.
Forever album.
Oh, to Return to Forever. Yeah, that makes sense.
Galaxy. But Steve Gadd's wife said to him, "Look, you're making a ton of money on the road. You're a family man. You can't go out with him. You got to do these sessions." So Steve Gadd, who did record and did play with him for a long time,
Yeah.
bowed out, and Lenny White came in, became a drummer. But
Oh.
anyway, in that time, I knew Stanley Clark because he was part of the band. And a friend of mine said, "I bet you could write if you wanted." And I said, "Okay, maybe I can." I sent out letters to a whole bunch of publications that said, "If I write an article on Stanley Clark, would you consider it for publication?" And I sent a self-addressed stamped envelope so they could write back if they wanted to and say yes or no. And I got a yes from a jazz publication in upstate New York called Different Drummer. So the first thing I ever did was an article on Stanley Clark and became the cover story. So I just kept writing from there. And because of
Nice.
Stanley Clark and Chick Corea, I kind of met all the people surrounding Miles Davis, except Miles.
Oh, of course.
So I was doing interviews with, Billy Cobham and John McLaughlin, John Hammer, but also Ron Carter, Airto Barrera, Flora Purim, Earl Father Hines, Keith Jarrett. So I was doing this jazz thing,
Yeah.
and I was doing some writing for Contemporary Keyboard, which is the sister publication of Guitar Player. And then I started doing some stuff for Guitar Player. People like Cornell Dupree from Stuff,
Yeah.
doing Jan Hammer for keyboards. And then this Japanese magazine sent me a check. They said, "We used some of your stuff. We reused your Guitar Player magazine stuff." I said, "Okay." I did David Spinoza, those kind of studio guys. And I contacted them and said, "You don't have to go secondhand. Why don't I be your American correspondent?" And they said yes. What I didn't know is they were huge in Japan. Player
Yeah.
magazine,
Oh, yeah.
monster. And so because of Player magazine in Japan, they would call me up and say, "We want you to do Van Halen." And I said, "Van Morrison? No, Van Halen."
Van Halen. Yeah.
And so I met Eddie when he was an opening act,
Yeah.
and I started working for Player magazine and traveling all over the country for them. They would do Jean Leponti, and they would do Willie Dixon, but they would do Van Halen, and they would do Ozzy, and they would do, they had me do incredible stuff. They sent me around the country. They said, "We want you to go to people's homes and take pictures of them at home with their guitars. As many of these as you can take, we'll pay you a large sum of money for each one and an unlimited number." So I was
Wow.
taking pictures of, Jeff Baxter with his guitars, to Tom Verlaine of television, to Johnny Ramone, to Al Di Meola, to Tom Scholes of Boston.
It reminds me of the loadout. The back page of the Guitar Protect Musician would sometimes be the loadout, and it'd just be the rack. The guy standing there with the guitar and like his gear, his stage gear.
That
Yeah.
was the reuse of those pictures.
Nice.
So what I did when he started Guitar Magazine, I was doing some freelance writing, and I was hired by Cherry Lane Music to do an interview with Judas Priest for a songbook they were doing. They thought, "Oh, we'll add a little something." So I did the interview. I brought it into Cherry Lane Music, and while I was there, I saw a photograph of Pat Benatar with the word guitar over it.
Mm-hmm.
I was literally just dropping off the interview. The president of the company, by sheer chance, walked in while I was there. And I just said to him, "I know what to do with the Guitar Magazine. You do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G." And all of those alphabet letters
Yeah.
were things that I would take from Player Magazine. I would take
Oh.
upfront photo sessions.
Yeah.
Player had that. Player had the poster. Player had everything in color.
So you were
And
importing the Japan concept for the States. This kind of reminds me of in the 80s, the Transformers were the same thing. Takara had a series of robots. They didn't have names, but you bring them to Marvel Comics and they give them names, and then suddenly you've got a cartoon hit on your hands.
And so I just took all of the things I was doing for the Japanese, and I said, I'll bring it to America. And I also said the other thing we're going to do is we're just going to be a rock magazine. We're not going to celebrate Chet Atkins. We're not going to celebrate Doc Watson.
Specializing is important because, like Guitar Player, it's like if you're not, there's no one player who's into every one of those styles, but if you're into one of those styles, then you get one article out of the issue. So it's like, I don't know, it's tricky to kind of maintain an audience.
Sherry Lane was able to add was the sheet music. All right, so that's the other thing.
Synergy.
Okay, and then the third thing was I'm going to appeal to the widest audience. Van Halen and Hendrix are at the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
To go to the bottom of the pyramid. We're going to go to people who are selling out Madison Square Garden rather than Robert Fripp.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go and we're going to be a real rock magazine, and nobody else is going to touch this because everybody else, including Guitar World, they were still doing Merle Travis, and they would do. I'm not going to do Pat Metheny. Pat Metheny will be on the cover of Guitar World.
Yeah, exactly. You got to find your niche. You got to carve it.
And rock magazine, and
yeah,
we're going to be pure about it, and it was fantastic. They let Bruce Pollock and I. Now Bruce was a great writer, and his thing was about songwriting. And if you notice from the very beginning, we had a songwriting column, and the attitude was this: great guitar playing lives over history, hitching a ride on a great song.
Yeah.
And that is why Jimmy Page and Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton,
Van Halen,
all of these guys were way on top. And my favorite player, Jeff Beck, was miles below.
Yeah.
Amazing player, but his amazing guitar playing was not hitched to a hit song, to a song. It wasn't, whoa, what a solo in Hotel California.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like initially he got in the front door, through the Rod Stewart, through the having a vocalist, through the Yardbirds, and then carved his own path. Because I'm going to go this way and maintain a steady presence. But
of a great guitar part hitched to a great song. Bruce Pollock had that songwriting column from day one.
Okay.
We talked to Carole King, we talked to Daryl Hall, we talked to Michael McDonald, we talked to guitar player songwriters, piano, we talked to Randy Newman.
Yeah.
If you can write a great song and there's a great guitar part on it, that great guitar part will live forever.
And and I think Guitar for the Practical Musician had I could feel that there was a real strong editorial perspective. Like, the people who are on the cover are generally players doing something interesting. Like, they're not just like who's hot this week. Oh, it's Motley Crue again or whatever. When I picked it up, I didn't start playing until 1990. In fact, this was the first issue that I ever got, was the anniversary issue. I started playing guitar in fall of 1990, and this was on the music stand. This is a second copy because my original disintegrated because I carried it around my junior high everywhere I went. But I could tell that there was something that distinguished this magazine from Guitar Player and from Guitar World, and it seemed to me specifically to be the columnists, because you had Steve Morse from pretty much day one not teaching you anything about notes. His column was pure text. And it was all of it was great advice. All of it was like all the things you're going to need to know to be a professional musician. You're going to need to know about how to go on the road. You're going to need to know about a contract or playing with other people or working with people. And fortunately, years later, like all of his articles were condensed into a book called Open Ears, named after the column. It's such a great book. It's so hard to find now, but it's so good. I wish that could be published again. But like Steve Morse, you also had Reeves Gabrels, you also had Alex Skolnick, and you had a lot of other columns that were, like, you had the Outside Corner where you would talk to They Might Be Giants or Mojo Nixon, and there was a real effort to not just be a Shredder's magazine. I mean, it was probably like 75% oriented towards like a Shredder audience, but also like I was thinking of the I think I had a note here about the November '93 issue where you had Mr. Big, Dr. No from Bad Brains, Jay Mascis, and a Replacements transcription. Like it was all over the place. It was everywhere that there was quality.
I'm thrilled that you were able to see inside the magazine and pull out what we were trying to do. It was about the creative process. For example, we never did a tour of the Gibson factory. We never did.
No gear. That's true. There's very little gear in the magazine.
I would go to Kramer or Gibson or whatever, and I would say, look, I know that you would like me to talk about the ins and outs of your factory, but what is selling your amp, your pedal, your guitar, your strings are the artists. So I'm going to put the focus on the artists that you are putting the focus on.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about as much as we can about the creative process.
How did you come to choose Steve Morse as your early columnist or your first column?
Well, uh, Steve was a friend from Player Magazine days. I
Mhm.
was a big fan of the Dixie Dregs. And uh, we were just starting out, uh, before the first issue, we had our uh, prototype issue
Yeah.
that we debuted at NAMM in June of 1983. And Steve was at NAMM, and I just talked to him and I said, let's do something where we talk about being a guitarist. We don't talk about exercises and playing. We talk about being a full person and the things that you will encounter. And he is a very honest person, so he's open to showing you the warts.
Yeah.
He's open to showing you the difficulties.
And he's a guy who has such a strong work ethic. I learned so much from him. There was a short-lived series called the Hot Guitarist Video Magazine, and he did an interview with them that was just talking about the if you can just the goal of being in music and playing music that you love to make, and money will find its way sort of to you. Like he was talking about playing a show where the show had been canceled, so they just played with battery-powered amps, and people just passed the hat around, and it's like, well, if you can still make some dollars.
He was just a wonderful friend. I just asked him out, asked him if you do it, and he said yes. And basically, what we did for every one of those was we pick a topic. I usually pick a topic, and we would talk. We would do interviews for those things, and we would dive deep. And the idea is to dive deep in a narrow subject.
Yeah.
Might be rehearsal, it
Yeah,
might be
exactly.
on the road,
Yeah.
and we did it for a long time. It was wonderful. I mean, tell you something about Steve. You talked about his work ethic. The Dregs are performing on stage. Rod Morgenstein is doing a drum solo. Steve walks off stage, and what does he do? He practices
Yeah.
for that 2 3 minutes.
Yeah.
He's doing exercises, and nobody sees him do it. That's what he's doing. But uh, he he did that column every month until he joined Kansas. And when he joined Kansas, the band Kansas said to him, "We want you to be a little bit harder to find, a little bit more mysterious, not so obvious. So we'd like you to stop the column." He worked with Kansas, did a great job with them. And when he left Kansas, he came back and we did more columns.
Nice. That's great. That's so interesting because and another columnist whose column was mostly just text and not like lessons or anything. Reeves had a column that was very interesting topics, going into deep dive of different types of topics and different types of perspectives that weren't just lessons specifically about notes.
Yeah.
How did Reeves come about as a columnist?
Brilliant, right? He's brilliant.
Hmm.
He's an explorer. And it was great to have somebody, who's out there, pushing the boundaries a bit and doing it in a commercial way. In other words, he had a tin machine with David Bowie. So, people would understand and know the name, but he's not out trying to have hits. He's out trying to make sounds and music that is elastic. And that was great. We had a guy named Robert Phillips who did a column on how classical guitar relates to rock guitar.
Yeah, that's true.
So these guys are, like I said, they're explorers, they're Magellans. And it's just wonderful to have them, like Billy Sheehan's column.
Yeah,
He was
exactly.
an explorer on the electric bass. He wasn't. And we also had, and I love this, Tom T-Bone Wolfe doing bass in the 80s.
Yeah.
And that was giving you transcriptions of real pop songs and sort of giving you a lesson on how they're composed and from a music theory point of view, how they're put together. One is composition, which is invention, and the other is why does it work? Why does it sound like this?
Yeah.
So we had people who were great players who were in the mainstream, and that was the other thing. I felt, if you noticed, certainly when I did it, I personally did almost 100% interviews because I wanted the voice of the guitar player, of the creator.
Yeah.
I wasn't interested in my voice
Yeah.
as much as
I did notice that. I continually noticed, like I was going through a lot of the old issues because I still have a bunch of them, your name is routinely the byline. You're the person, conducting the cover interviews usually, and several of the other interviews per issue.
Well, I was lucky. Like I said, Bruce and I had different tasks. My task was to dream up what all columns should be. I would dream up who should be in every issue. I would come up with the songs and I would pick all the photos. Bruce put it all together.
Okay.
And he did his songwriting column, and he was a spectacular editor, and he was a great writer.
Yeah.
I'm an okay writer. He was a wonderful writer.
I have a book of his, but he did a book on the music in the Greenwich Village scene in the 60s.
Oh, he did all kinds of wonderful books.
Yeah.
He's still doing it.
Yeah. And just speaking of the baseline thing, it's like, it is super important. Like, if you're going to do Anthrax Has Got the Time, you're going to want to have the bass line in that, because that's like that's the half the fun is the bass line.
So Bruce and I would have fantastic conversations all day long about the mix of what goes in the magazine. And one of the things that we always did is we always said, if we have three aces, let's put all three in that magazine as opposed to one now,
Yeah.
one a little while later, and one later after that. We would try and make each magazine as powerful and as potent as it could be. We didn't hold back. We wanted to make each one as great as it could be.
And you balance the transcriptions pretty well between ease of ability, like for this example, like Steve Vai's "I Would Love To" for the advanced player, and then Tom Petty's "Running Down a Dream" for the beginner, because it's such a great, really simple riff, easy to start with.
I always believed that it was about the song more than the playing.
Okay.
So I didn't care if it was a hit. It was worth going in if the guy, Tom Petty, you know, it was the song they wanted to learn. It didn't all have to be Larry Carlton Room 335.
Yeah.
You know, and so what we always wanted classics.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't care if the song was a long or short. One of my favorite things was putting in 21 pages of Sultans of Swing.
Yeah.
It was because the song deserved it, not because the guitar playing was just great guitar playing. So people would buy it for the song.
Yeah,
People would come to me later and talk about where I can get the songs. They wouldn't talk to me as much about the edit.
Would you, like, what month to month was always just like a big list of like kind of like wish list transcriptions you wanted to make sure and you would try to pursue them? How did you get them?
It would always change. But the amazing thing was this: people had never put guitar transcriptions in magazines before. There had been piano arrangements in piano. There was a magazine called Sheet Music Magazine where they put in public domain songs for piano players.
Yeah.
So I was able to license every spectacular guitar song you can imagine. You know, a Hendrix song, the Beatles songs, Johnny B. Good in the early days for $50 a song.
I was wondering how expensive they were, because that would have seemed to be prohibitive today.
Expensive in the beginning because nobody, it's just gravy.
Yeah.
An example. Cherry Lane, which was a great publishing company and a print publishing, meaning sheet music and songbooks company, we were able to get, I was helpful certainly in getting some of the big folks, and some came in for free, meaning we were already working with some great lawyers. And they said, we have a brand new band, Metallica, should we take them? Oh yeah, we'll take it.
Nice.
But I was instrumental in getting Cherry Lane, the sheet music for Van Halen, because I had worked with Sammy Hagar and their manager. And I said, I know how we can get, when Sammy joined, we can get Van Halen. We're going to appeal to Sammy's end of it.
Okay.
And that's how we got it. And, but my point is this: the best-selling songbook in 1985 or whatever, or 86, for Warner Brothers was the Van Halen piano vocal book.
That's right, because they're trying to get the chords.
So we said, we're going to get Van Halen. We're going to put out all the records in tab.
Yeah.
No. So in the 80s, we had control of Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and Van Halen. Joe Satriani. We had all these guys that we owned the rights to.
Yeah.
Anything else we could license.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there was never a thought we can't get a song.
Yeah.
You
When you
know,
start, when the go back to the columns real quick, Buck Dharma started Guitar Secrets, I think, right?
yes.
Yeah. And then Steve
I
Vai,
think Rick Derringer started Guitar
Rick
Secrets.
Derringer, that's right, Rick Derringer started Guitar Secrets. What made you, how did it come about that Steve Vai took over the column? Because at the time, Steve was, I think, in Alcatraz. It was pre-Roth that he started the column, I believe.
Well, what happened was, I believe it started with Rick Derringer, and
Okay.
he had a book, his own book of like Guitar Secrets. And I thought Rick was a wonderful player and a really nice guy.
Oh, yeah.
So, and the whole point of these columns, by the way, was to give you one kernel. I would always say, we are not going to do the modes,
Mm-hmm.
one mode.
Yeah.
We're going to give you one idea presented clearly and completely. And we'll do that one at a time, and we'll present them over time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the point of those columns. You know, they were just one, I would call them nuggets, one
Mm-hmm.
little nugget. So you could play the lute and go and have success
Mm-hmm.
rather than feel, I'm going to give you all of it at once. If I give you 5 records of 5 bands that you love, you're going to go to the first one, you're going to do it. You might go to the second, you may not get to the other 3.
No, yeah.
But if I give you those albums one a month, you'll
Yeah.
spend time. So in terms of learning, the idea is finite, small, complete. So Rick Derringer started that.
Yeah.
Buck Dharma lived in Connecticut. He lived it was on the Stanford uh, Greenwich border,
Mm-hmm.
and we were in Portchester, not far away.
Yeah.
So he was a great player, a great guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I would go to his house, you know, and we got along really well. We'd do an interview. So when Rick was done, we went to Buck, and then after Buck, I believe it went to Joe Satriani, and I hired Joe Satriani well before Surfing with the Alien,
Okay.
you know, and he was a great teacher.
That's right.
And if you looked at those columns, you'll see those were also about nuggets, one idea presented clearly. And after Joe, I had met Steve Vai during courtesy, by the way, of Buck Dharma. Buck Dharma, Don Roser from Blue Oyster Cult,
Okay.
played me the Attitude song. You know,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
wow, this guy really is great. You know?
Yeah.
So I'm sure Joe Satriani did the column for a long time.
Okay.
And, you know, I can't really remember if it was Joe first or Steve first. I'm embarrassed that I don't.
I should go back and look at that. I know that Steve started Guitar Secrets in November of '85, and Buck was before that. So I think Joe might have taken over from Steve after Steve went on tour with
I
Roth.
think you're correct.
Yeah.
I think you're correct. And Steve did it for a good long time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Go ahead.
and well, I just thought that he had an enormous amount of knowledge and the clarity to share that knowledge.
Yeah.
You know, he was the opposite. Van Halen was a gift from the gods. He had no idea how he did it and why he did it. He was just a fountain. And it just
Wolfgang, yeah, Wolfgang says the same thing. Is like my dad was a terrible teacher. He didn't know that.
you stood out, right? He was just an amazing person to be around and would share anything with you, but he didn't know where it came from or how he did it.
Yeah.
Vai is one of the most creative guitar players there's been, I believe.
Yeah.
And but he knows what he's doing in
Yeah.
terms of theory and the ability to articulate it. So he was a great teacher. I did one of my favorite things I did at the end of Cherry Lane, after the magazine, is I did a couple of educational DVDs with Johnny Winter.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that Johnny couldn't teach it. So what I did is went to Johnny's house and I just had him play. We're going to play a whole bunch of things on slide guitar, different ideas. You just play. And then you're going to play a whole bunch of things with regular picking, and you're just going to play. And then I'm going to have a teacher. They're going to watch you play, and then someone's going to teach you how to play it who's a real teacher. So you get both Johnny
Yeah.
Winter's real playing
Yeah.
but a great teacher who can.
For the analysis.
So you got both in that video rather than I'm Starlix, I can play, but I don't. It's a
Here's how it
pentatonic.
goes. Yeah.
And then he goes in, and this is what I did. Being a great player doesn't mean you're a great teacher.
No,
I'm
totally.
a
Yeah.
player. I'm a pretty good teacher. I can teach a lot more than I can play.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So
I noticed that Steve's first interview, I think, was March of '86, and he alludes to a secret project because I guess he wasn't able to talk about the Roth thing. Was that interview with Steve strategic because there was an awareness of the Roth project coming, or was it just time to interview Steve at length? Or do you remember?
time to interview Steve at length.
Okay,
So we did a whole big thing on Alcatraz, as I recall.
that's
And
right.
Inflexible.
Hmm.
And he was great. He did it for a long time. And you're right, then Satriani did it forever. And we did a bunch of books with Joe Satriani, Joe Satriani's Guitar Secrets.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's another good book. Then that one you can actually find, I think. Yeah, that's true.
We did with Steve Morse, Open Ears.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we did a book of bass secrets, by the way,
Hmm.
with Billy Sheehan and Randy Cohen. There are a couple other guys in there. Who is the bass player in The Firm?
Oh gosh, I know this name. Oh, the phone. Tony Franklin.
Tony Franklin. Now I'm
Yeah.
embarrassed that I forgot that.
Sorry, Tony. Yeah, he has a good column too. Yeah.
Yeah, so we put all those bass columns together, because it makes sense. The same way that I put guitar, the listening room.
That's right. Did you take that from Downbeat? Is that?
favorite column?
It's a great column. I love it. I did. I'm guessing it was taken from. It's from Downbeat, right?
Absolutely. I'll tell you what I did. I think Downbeat did a really good job, but they didn't delve into it. The guy could say, "Oh, I'm going to guess who it is," and then he'll say, "I think he played really well," and I give it 4 stars.
Yeah.
And I said, "Wow, I adopted that idea,
Mm-hmm.
stolen from Downbeat,
Yeah.
and I said, I'm going to make this my style of interview. And I did this long before Guitar for the Practicing Musician.
Hmm.
In international musician and recording world, I called it a good hard listen.
Oh, okay.
And what I did was, I took all of my research. So I'm going to interview Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull,
Hmm.
and I'm going to do a whole lot of deep dives
Yeah.
into. And so I realized, the first song that he ever played was "Serenade to a Cuckoo" by Roland Kirk. So the first song I played him in the listening room was "Serenade to a Cuckoo," and he goes, "Oh, I love this song. This is what got me going." And we would talk about that, and it would get him talking about his early days, right?
Yeah.
And we would do that until he was finished, and then I would play him another song. And so I used that to get the artist to talk about themselves. And then I would extract that from the interview. Every interview that I did in Guitar Magazine, there was a listening room for. And I would extract the part where he talked specifically about the song and use that as the column, and the rest of it.
Yeah, I noticed that sometimes you would pull in multiple participants within.
And I would always try and do things that were important for history.
Yeah.
Their history, right?
I was just you say that because what popped into my head just then was the one that I found where you asked Stevie Ray Vaughan to listen to Yngwie Malmsteen.
Yeah, right. And the other thing I would do is play people something that I consider to be great guitar playing of a whole different animal. Not even guitar playing. Here's a great example. I played Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie for Ted Nugent. And he says to me, that is the epitome of improvisation. I got that.
Ted knows.
I played Ralph Towner for Iron Maiden. And they go, that is beauty personified. So the point is, if I was lucky, I picked something that was so universally solid in what it presented.
Yeah.
That, you could say, this may not be my thing, but this is something to talk about or something to. So, there are only 2 people who didn't really kind of get it as a listening room kind of thing.
Mhm.
One was B.B. King.
Hmm.
He didn't understand why I was playing this stuff, so I kind of abandoned it. And the other one was Van Halen.
Huh.
And I continued on with the Van Halen. And eventually, a couple of years ago, I put out a book called The Van Halen That I Knew. And it has all of my interviews with all the different band members, not just
Mhm.
Ed.
Yeah.
And it also includes things that I didn't put in Guitar Magazine that maybe Eddie wouldn't want me to, or even if he didn't say he didn't want me to, I felt that I didn't want to cause a stir. Meaning, he'll talk about why Richie Blackmore doesn't like him or something.
Yeah. Right.
That's in the book, but
Yeah.
it wasn't in the interview. But that Van Halen listening room is now out in that book.
Okay. To take that.
And
Is that still in print?
it was interesting. Uh, like I played him all along. I played him "Come On" Part 2 from the Electric Ladyland, Jimi
Oh,
Hendrix,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And he said to me, "That's okay. It's just sort of like him trying to be good." I really love "All Along the Watchtower," but the only thing I got from Hendrix was where he hides his pick when he needs it, and he would hide it, and he goes, "And that's how I hide my pick, and thus I tap and stuff."
Oh.
But I saw him hide his pick,
Oh, interesting.
but it was interesting to have him talk about that, or to talk about uh, uh, he loved Chet Atkins. Like I played him some Chet Atkins, and
Yeah.
he got it.
Hmm.
But so it was interesting. So that listening room was a thrill for me. It was a lot of work to do because I would always do a lot of pre-interview work to make sure that I could cover the bases.
And they were short. Each little example of a song was a paragraph, maybe or so.
Yeah,
It didn't
I
go very
but
deep.
the rest of it was the interview that you
Oh,
read.
okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Tell me about finding Alex Skolnick as a columnist.
Uh, Alex Skolnick was somebody who learned from Joe
Joe,
Satriani.
yeah.
So Alex Skolnick was a hard rock player with super chops who understood how uh, how and why he was doing what he was doing,
Yeah.
and a really nice guy. All of these columnists had to be nice guys because we would interact a lot. I mean, they had to be
Yeah.
willing to take my call
Yeah.
on the fly, and uh, deadlines for a magazine are real.
Yeah.
That's an awful lot to ask any
Hard for a musician.
professional touring guitarist.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a commitment.
Uh, and Alex also lived in New York.
Yeah, oh, that's certainly
Made
convenient.
it a little easier. And one of the cool things for me about Alex was at the time he was doing the column and shortly thereafter, he was saying to himself, "I want to study bebop guitar.
Yeah.
I want to add that language." Again, another Magellan, and another guy going off on the adventure, right?
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't. This is interesting. We'll come back. I'll do this, and then I'll do the Randy Rhoads thing. Uh, I was doing my Guitar for the Practicing Musician label, and I had guitars practicing musicians. And he was a columnist,
Yeah.
and he did the song "So What" by Miles Davis.
Yeah.
He eventually would do whole albums of a bebop rendition of a Kiss song or a Scorpion song. You
Oh,
may
yeah.
not know that.
Yeah, they're so good.
The very first time he attempted that was for my album "Guitar Practicing Musician."
Oh, okay.
And
Didn't he? I think he also did it for the third volume three.
Miles
He did a track too for.
Davis song, "So What." So that was the first time he was sort of playing. In that case, it was a modal song, but he was doing his bebop licks
Mhm.
with his guitar, hard rock tone. So that was the early exploration for that. And in terms of being a Magellan, I said, "Oh, I want to tell you a Randy Rhoads story." Randy was talking to me, and he said to me, "How do people learn? What does Van Halen do for inspiration?" And I
Yeah.
say that, I mean, Van Halen really did stuff. Van Halen would lock himself in the closet and
Yeah.
just, thrash it out until the cream bubbled up. But there was a lot of cream there, so it
Yeah.
kept bubbling up.
Yeah.
But most guitar players who were on the road were not looking to continue to stretch, at least not on the road. They were
Yeah,
doing the gig, they were
yeah,
doing the interviews,
yeah,
they were doing the parties. And they were, I'm sure they were composing as well, but very few guitar players, maybe Randy was the only one who said to me, I got to keep growing. I need new input. I'm doing the same solo every night. I don't like it.
yeah. Yeah, and that's and that's kind of like that's the magazine that answers the need there because there were so many players in that era, in the Randy era, the post Van Halen era. Everyone's learning all this new stuff that we've just now discovered is possible on the guitar, thanks to Van Halen. And there's so many people, looking to go even further. Then the Paul Gilberts come out, the second wave of post Van Halen shredders. And where do they get all their material from? How do they find each other and
My
stuff?
point is, Alex Skolnick was one of those people looking to expand while he was
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I did learn my modes from an Alex Skolnick column. And also too, let's talk about guitar recordings. Tell me about the ethos behind Blues Saraceno's albums, CPR, the Randy Coven, John O'Reilly, and Al Pitrelli record, and Randy Coven's records as well.
So, absolutely stolen tip of the hat to Mike Varney and Shrapnel. The idea was not only could Shrapnel do it with just guitar players, and Guitar for the Practicing Musician had an audience of guitar players, but also Mike Varney had a column.
Always the first page, always the first, inside ad in the magazine for several years. Yeah.
Mike Varney also had a spotlight column in Guitar Player magazine.
And that showed up in the Good Practice Musician as well.
So I did something called a resume.
Yeah.
It was the tip of the hat to Mike Varney, and it was stolen. I stole the idea from Mike Varney. Let's do a column. Let's do it in our magazine. And I invited people to send in their tapes, and I got a lot of them. And I took it very seriously. It took me hours and hours at home listening to cassettes to find three.
Yeah.
And then I had to write about them. And remember, Cherry Lane is we have the magazine, but Cherry Lane is really a music publisher, ownership of copyrights. So Milt Oken, who is the owner of Cherry Lane, said to me, "You want to start a label? You want to handle it?" And I said, "Great, I'd love to." And I said, "What do I do?" He said, "Just follow your instincts." What a wonderful treat in my life.
Right?
Somebody, first, he let me do everything I wanted for Guitar for the Practicing Musician magazine. You know how much it cost? It cost $10,000 every month for that color poster. Just the poster.
Wow.
10 grand. Boom.
Wow.
And there's no advertising on that poster.
No, there's not. That's true.
We needed a calendar, and eventually we put an interview on the back.
Yeah. Yeah. Utilize the space.
All the upfront color, all of the transcriptions cost a lot of money. And in the beginning, he said to me, "Why don't we just do an approximation? We'll do guitar tab, but we'll do, the basics of the song." And I said to him, I said, if we do a mirror image of the song and we do a Rolls Royce transcription, the best anybody can do copying us is a Bentley. So let's let these transcriptions be amazing. All of them be amazing, not partials. We're not going to do part of the song. We'll do all of the song, not just the main riffs. In the beginning, we sort of did main riffs and solos and stuff the very first couple of years.
Yeah.
So he said, "Yeah, do it. Yeah, let's do it." So when he said to me, "You could start a record company," he didn't say, "And here's your budget." He just said, "Use your imagination." Okay?
Oh, that's not, how many people get that sort of chance,
So I got that once.
Yeah.
And then I got it twice. I got it for the record label.
That's great.
So I'm going through everything, and I said to myself, it's got to be somebody great. It can't just be somebody good or really, really good.
Yeah.
And I had people who I thought were really, really good, and I got close to signing my first person who I thought was really, really good. but uh, didn't blow me away. I mean, they were really good. I'm not going to mention names.
Okay.
And then this little cassette comes in with 3 songs from this kid, Blue Saraceno, 16 years old.
Wow.
I put it on. That's it.
It sent in because of the column, because of the spotlight column?
The resume column, right?
That's great.
Now remember, we're going to sign him to a record company. We're also going to sign the publisher.
But you didn't put him in the column, did you? I don't think I don't think I ever saw him. I remember seeing John Finn, I remember seeing Toshi Estate, I remember seeing a lot of players, but I don't think I remember seeing Blues in the actual column itself. I just remember who is Blues.
I'm
Yeah,
going to look it up,
Yeah.
and you may very well be right.
All right.
You stumped me. I don't know that.
I'll
But
have
I
to do that.
put the songs. I called him up, and I said, I want you to come in, and you got to play for me because I got to know that you can do this.
Yeah, geez,
And the 3
16.
songs were, I think, the first 3 songs on the first album. It was
Never Look Back.
So the first thing he blew me away with Remember When. It's a ballad. It
Yeah.
starts with harmonics.
Yeah.
It starts with tone, touch, phrasing, melody.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in whispering.
Yeah.
When you whisper, people who are interested will come in to hear.
With every record that starts out just like, I think of like the typical example being Racer X, opening with like Frenzy and just giving you all the notes. And then Blues Saraceno's first record just kind of like eases you into the thing very simply. And as a transcription too, it's an easy song for a beginner to sort of learn. It doesn't have any super difficult licks. It's just melodic.
But it has this tone and touch and phrasing that is just elegant, I think.
Yeah.
So Blues came in, he played, we signed him, and in fact, the first Guitarist of the Practicing Musician album, that was this, I said, I'll do blues. I said, I might as well do all the people who are friends of the Guitar magazine. So we did Guitars Practicing Musicians Volume 1.
Yeah.
Steve Morse did a song, and Billy Sheehan did a song. Steve Vai did a song, A Reckless Fable. He did a Reckless Fable because at the time he was with David Lee Roth and Roth.
He couldn't use his name. That's funny. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, but we also got Vivian Campbell. The very first recording of Vivian Campbell is on there. The very
Six
first recording
Guns.
of Bruce Kulick is on there. The first recording of Jennifer Batten is on there. Right?
That's true. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
So all of these things, and the Blue Saraceno track that's on there, which I think it's Never Look Back. It's the demo. It's not.
It's the actual demo. It's not the album version.
Right.
I'm gonna have to pick that. I have to look that. I've probably got it in a drawer or in another room.
And so my take on what to do with a record was I've never produced a record before, but I said to myself, you want to be prepared. Blues chose Joe Franco, who's a tremendous drummer. I chose Randy Coven, and there was a lot of rehearsal. And the thing that you have to know is that everything on the Blue Saraceno record that sounds spontaneous was not.
Ah, okay.
He worked out those licks, one after another, the order, the tone, everything about it was worked out by Blues.
Okay.
And I think it's amazing because it sounds, I shouldn't be surprised. I remember Steve Lukather Toto told me that when they did Rosanna, they did it one person at a time. Sounds like the band is playing together, but they didn't.
Wow. Yeah.
So but this kid is 16 with but we did the whole rhythm section together. And Blues would overdub his guitar part.
Okay, that's cool.
He'd play with it, then he would over. But those licks are as good as composed. Anyways, Randy Coven, I find, I'm at the NAMM show, which is the National Association of Music Merchants.
Sure, yeah.
And he must have come by, and I don't think it was Randy. It might have even been the drummer. I think it was the name
Don Riley?
Todd Tursker.
Oh, okay.
And gave me this album called Randy Coven Funk Me Tender. Brought it home, and I loved the album. I said, I want this album on guitar recordings. Now, Randy Coven was a wonderful bass player, but he composed for the band. He didn't compose for bass solos.
Yeah, no, totally. And I remember hearing his tune "Tree" in like a compilation of like New Age or like somewhere other than the world of shred guitar. Like it was just a beautiful tune. It doesn't, even need to be.
The song Tree was on Funk Me Tender.
Yeah,
The song Funk Me Tender also features Steve Vai, because Randy and Steve Vai played together at Berkeley in a group called Morning Thunder.
that's right. Morning Thunder. Were they roommates or they were just in the band?
I think they were in a band. I don't think
They
they
were
were
just in the band together.
They
Yeah,
were, and so Steve, before he was Steve Vai in quotes, played on Randy's album, and the song Funk Me Tender. He plays a
yeah,
great guitar solo. And it's total Steve Vai. It's not like, who could that be?
yeah. Right. Yeah,
Oh, all the Steve Vai-isms are there. And it's beautiful.
and just
So I bring Randy into Blues' album. And so Never Look Back is done. And I'm really proud of that. We decided we needed an acoustic song, so he writes an acoustic song.
okay.
He wanted an eruption type song, and he does that.
Hmm.
But he composed all of it. And he was a wonderful, wonderful player. And the only tension that we had was he would want to go from A to B, and he would do that line back and forth, a straight line.
Hmm.
Every once in a while, he would go from A to B and he would play it, and intentionally or not, he would veer off of it, but he would get from A to B. And it was a spontaneous moment. And as a producer, I would love to try and convince him to keep the spontaneity
Yeah.
rather than the perfection. And we would meet certainly in the middle. I'm sure he's proud of the album. I really am too. Everything I did with him, he was wonderful. But everything we did was, like you said, was composed. I mean, we did Funk 49 from the James Gang as our cover. I wanted a cover song on every one of my records because I believed that people would look at the album or the CD and recognize the song, and if nothing else, go there first.
Yeah. I still listen. I'm still trying to play the Shakes by Blues Saraceno. There's one little lick that no matter how many years I cannot nail. And he was like 16, 17 when he made the record. It's just disheartening that he was so good at doing it.
A guitar tab book for Never Look Back.
Oh, I've worn it out. Believe me, I've had it for many years. Oh yeah.
That lick not in book?
No, it's in there. I just can't play it. I just can't. I don't know how he does it. Like it's so quick. The theme is and the next time around is and it's so tricky. The way it's transcribed, it might be inaccurate to the way he actually played it, but anyways, that'll be my white whale if I can someday nail that. And with the swing feel that he has, which so few players had a swing feel. And I was pulling out this conversation actually started because I tracked down this particular issue of the guitar, which has the guitar in the '90s roundtable with Jennifer Baden, Richie Kotzen, Louis Saraceno, and Michael Foth. And another thing that the guitar practice musician would feature people on not major labels. Like Michael Foth is not on a major label. And like you say, Jennifer Batten hadn't really been out there yet. And Kotzen was just starting with Shrapnel. And I also noticed in the resume column, Mr. Brian Carroll, also known as Buckethead. So that's an interesting one. That Buckethead showed up in the resume column before he was Buckethead.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's all my jaw just went wide when I saw that Brian Carroll, Claremont, California. That looks really familiar. And I highly recommend everyone watching to do a YouTube search of Brian Carroll with his band. Forget the name of the band is. I'll have to post it in the links. But like, it's him playing in a cover band. You can hear it's him. You can see his regular face, but he's playing, and he's like, that's Buckethead's right hand, and you can tell that it's actually him. And I wanted to talk briefly as well about CPR, the CPR record. How did Al Petrelli come into Randy's sphere, and how did that record come
Al
together?
and Randy, I'm not sure how they met, but they're both Long Island musicians. So
Yeah.
they were, Randy and Al and John O'Reilly, right,
Yeah.
were they were all buds. You know,
Yeah. Okay.
that was the thing. Uh, the CPR album was the second album they did together. The first one was Funk Me Tender.
That's Funk Me Tender, by the way, just in case anyone's wondering. It is funk. It is not the other word.
Yeah, Funk Me Tender. No, Funk Me Tender. The first album was Sammy Says Ouch, which Randy Cohen got from Sammy Davis Jr. Because Sammy Davis,
Oh, that's the same.
ouch, baby. Anyway, and Sammy Says Ouch, there's a Lou Saraceno guitar solo on there too. I don't know if you knew that.
I don't think I knew that. I have to look that up.
What happens is Randy does a version of the Charlie Parker song called Au Preuve. And of course, Al was a Berkeley guy as well too. So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right. And so we start off with Randy, walking and swinging, and Al doing the head, the Charlie Parker alto sax head, and playing. And then for the solo, we wanted it to, just turn into a boogie. And I brought Lou Saraceno in, and he does his whole thing.
That's so good. I gotta dig that up.
Saraceno, check out Au Preuve from Randy Cohen.
Okay.
I played that song for Jack Bruce when we did a Jack Bruce listening room.
And that's how she got the gig with Cream?
No, but he did get the gig. Guitar recordings had an interesting history. This is kind of cool. Leslie West from Mountain was one of my favorite players, and he also lived in Westchester. And he did a version of Born to Be Wild for Guitars Practicing Musician. And when he got the record, when I did that first record, I had baseball cards made for all the artists. So when you got the record as a promo, you got some baseball cards. So Leslie West gets the record because he's on it, and he gets the baseball cards, and Randy Cohen's on there, and he goes, Leslie West is one of these guys. When you talk and you say Leslie said, you go, "Wow, Stix," you impersonate. And he goes, "Well, Stix put a bass player on here. This guy should be pretty good," So you'll like this because the song that he listened to is Tree.
Oh, nice. Okay.
He hires Randy Cohen to be his bass player.
Okay.
So as a result of that album.
That's cool.
Now, I've lost my train of thought. We were talking about somebody else, Randy Cohen, and
we're talking about the CPR, but then we were also talking about
Sammy Says Ouch.
Yeah, Blue Saraceno solo there.
Right.
But convenient that Blue Saraceno was also from Connecticut, so he's probably pretty close to the Portchester area as well.
he was an hour and a half away.
Okay.
But so, and then Randy, by the way, went on. First, he plays with Leslie West, and then he went on and played with Yngwie Malmsteen.
I don't remember that. Okay.
Or with Malmsteen. He might be at a video like in Russia or something.
Yeah.
But that was sort of a cool little guitar magazine.
Yeah. Connections. What I also wanted to ask you, why did the magazine not get a spine? Why the staples? Guitar Player had a spine, Guitar World had a spine, but we have the staples, and so as a result, the magazines don't hang together very long.
I don't think it ever. In all honesty, I don't think it ever came up.
Okay.
But also, if you're doing sheet music, it's better to have the.
That's true. It does play flat better.
Yeah,
because Guitar World, you have to kind of like bend the spine to get the transcription out. That makes sense. I guess there's always an exchange there.
CPR was a real band. And,
okay. They played gigs. They gigged, would do shows.
And it was kind of cool. And at one point, Al Pitrelli couldn't make it, and they had the guy who's in Bon Jovi now.
Phil X.
Phil X.
Yeah.
X played with Randy Cohen for a bit. That's when I met him. He was playing with Randy. But CPR, Al Pitrelli was this great guitar player, knew what he was doing, and he was a great arranger. He wasn't just a player.
Yeah, and of course the great "I Wish" by Stevie Wonder is on that record with Zakk Wylde. I think who else was on with who there? Everybody, there was a host of soloists. Mark Wood, the violinist, was on there. Zakk Wylde is on there. Zakk Wylde sings on it. It's the first
I
time I'd ever heard Zakk Wylde sing.
I Zakk Wylde with CPR. Okay, the song you're talking about is Back in Black.
No,
So
that's right. They did Back in Black. Oh, I'm thinking of Back in Black. That's right. It was
I'll do
Zakk
my
sang on "I Wish,"
first.
and the jam was Back in Black. Yeah.
I wish I met Zakk early on when he just was playing with Ozzy, and what a really nice guy. And we became friends. And I asked him. I knew that he could sing, and I knew he sounded like Greg Allman. In fact, uh, there's a song that he played for me that he's never recorded called "Your Boogeyman." I want to be your boogeyman, or something like that. And he had this great idea, and I wish he would do it even now. And the idea is he would go, "Woo, I'm your boogeyman." That I thought was great. Anyway, so Zakk, that's what I remember. So I asked him if he would sing "I Wish." He said, "Sure, Johnny." And literally, all I did was give him a plane ticket. He hopped on a plane. No, that's just for the. I'm sorry. He hopped on a plane for the video. I
Yeah.
went out to California to record it.
Okay. The video is available. I guess is it the Back in Black video? That's the one. And they made a music video of the
There
Back
was
in
a
Black.
video of "I Wish."
It's on. Oh, they made the video. I wish. Okay, there is a. Okay, yeah, I did see that. The video is available on YouTube for anybody
But
curious.
I flew out to California to record him singing and playing the song "I Wish," and he nailed it quickly. And here's something you should know about Zakk. He did this great guitar solo, and he goes, "Is that good?" I said, "That's good." He goes, "All right." He goes, "Let's double it." So that he doubled it live.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Song, and then so he knows his stuff.
That's amazing.
Not just bullshitting it, or that's not a good word.
Yeah.
He's not just improvising and
No. Yeah.
on the fly. He's got it.
What? So I know I just want a couple more minutes probably left. But do you have any particular like? I mean, I'm sure you have a million stories of interviewing people or anything. But do you have any like your top favorite crazy stories just from working with so many different people over the years?
I'd have to call you back because I'd have to.
Okay. I'm going to come back to that in a part two.
I'll tell you a great guitar story that had nothing to do with Guitar Magazine now.
Okay.
Very early on, I was way into the Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Okay.
And John McLaughlin was a Sri Chinmoy disciple, and as part of his where he lived in Queens. Sri Chinmoy had a restaurant, and John McLaughlin was a waiter at the restaurant.
John McLaughlin was a waiter at Sri
Wow.
Chinmoy's restaurant in Queens. Okay.
This is while the Mahavishnu Orchestra is blowing up. He's headlining, right? Playing in the hall. He's playing. And I go there and I meet him, and he's my waiter, right? He's my waiter. And I say to him, now keep in mind, this is John McLaughlin, Intermountain Flame and Birds of Fire.
Miles Davis, yeah.
But those two albums are happening.
Yeah.
Say, I'm a guitar player. And he says to me, "You're a guitar player? I'm a guitar player too." That blew me away. Has nothing to do with Guitar Magazine.
He was just excited to see another guitar player in the
He
restaurant.
was that humble.
He was that how he didn't yet know that he was John McLaughlin, capital letters.
One of my great moments, and this is also pre-Guitar Magazine. This is during when I'm doing stuff with Guitar World. That I spend the afternoon with Eddie Van Halen at Nassau Coliseum, building guitars for his performance that night.
Oh wow.
And I'm holding a pickup while he's doing the solder.
Wow. What year was this?
He's building. He's headlining Nassau Coliseum, and he's building his own guitar. He's having a great time.
Sure.
But,
Yeah. What year was this?
I think it was Women and Children First.
Oh wow. Okay. Was it a red and white stripe, or was it one of the other early stripe guitars, or something different? Which guitar was it?
Might have been red, white, might have been black.
Okay.
But actually, I'm sure I can find a photo of it somewhere.
Okay. Do you have? Go ahead.
But I would say that spending time with Ed and Randy Rhoads was special because they were really on another level and uh,
Yeah.
and thoughtful and thoughtful. You
And kind
know,
of quiet, like just,
story
not
I tell
promoters.
about Randy Rhoads, where I say to him, what's your weakness? And he goes, my weakness is the sound. If the sound's not right, I can't. Uh, I just can't do my best. And then he stops and goes, well, that's not true. My weakness is really my girlfriend. If we're having a problem, that really throws me. And I said to him, that's great. I said, people are better than guitars any day. But how many people are going to give you the answer of my sound? Almost anybody might say that. How many are going to say it's my girlfriend and it's a personal thing?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Crazy. One last question. Do you have all of your interview tapes still, and are they in good shape?
That is yes.
Hmm.
I may be selling them to a movie company. I have all these interviews. I don't know what to do with them. I put snippets of them on Now Hear This podcast,
Hmm.
and I at one point I did an app that I did with the estate of Randy Rhoads with his mom and his brother and sister, and I put out all the audio, and it was available for a year or two of every conversation I had with Randy Rhoads, including every conversation I had with all the people around him,
Everybody.
Rudy Sparzo, his mom, his sister, Ozzy,
I mean, I mean, it's what's interesting is I feel like as the era of of bands and classic, players, it seems to be a little bit declining. I think in the world of popular music, it's mostly about individual stars. But also, I think there is a rising undercurrent over the last 15, 20 years of players who want to know how to play. Again, like the fact that Polyphia, are you familiar with the band Polyphia? They're an all instrumental band and they're selling out venues left and right because there's an audience on the internet for instrumental, musicianship. And it's just fantastic to see that coming back in a way. And it's because the internet allows anyone who's really good to put a video out there and it can get around. Like I wish that this era had seen Sean Lane, because Sean Lane would have been so much more. There's still nobody. I've watched a million YouTube videos. No one can do the things that Sean Lane did, and I feel like maybe he would have survived longer if he'd had more awareness and support, because he was not a promoter either. He was a very quiet guy that didn't like to answer the phone.
I
Um,
included John Lane in a round table, and I also put him in my guitars practicing musicians. Uh, and I'll tell you how I ended at guitar.
oh yeah,
I personally was done in by the grunge movement. I actually personally could not stay at Guitar Magazine because the era of people wanting to be great guitar players, diving in headfirst and learning and exploring
exploring.
over. And I said, I can't do this. I can't.
Yeah, I saw that. So
I have to leave because I can't get behind. The last, great guitar players that I worked with was Kim Thale of Soundgarden.
yeah,
But just sort of after that, I personally said I have to step down
it
because
was
my
lean.
heart's not in it.
Yeah, there was not there were the lean years. I had just gone to college and I was like, nobody's allowed to take a solo anymore. Like Daryl from Pantera and Zakk Wylde were the only guys that were allowed to take guitar solos. And he had bands like Weezer, who were another band from the LA Strip, who decided to hide their chops and become a very different thing. And a lot of Billy Corgan is on a record saying the same thing. It's like, I'm not going to let you guys know that I love Eddie Van Halen. And so, yeah, I saw that your last issue in the masthead was the end of '94. So 1995 is when HP Nuquist took over as editor. And what have you been doing since? So I need to make sure that we mentioned you do have a podcast called Now Hear This. It's available on Apple Podcasts.
Nowhearthis.com.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhearthismusic.com.
NowHearThisMusic.com.
Find it.
HEAR for the hear, right? Yeah.
And in the last few years, I've put out a couple of books, self-published on Amazon. A book on Laura Nyro, great
Oh,
songwriter.
okay.
Book on
Cool.
Van Halen. I did a book on the blues, which
Hmm.
is really kind of cool. I think I called it Talking Blues Off the Record. And what I did is that I had all of the listening rooms. I compiled all of the people talking about blues artists.
Oh, wow.
And then I also put on a bunch of interviews that I've done with a lot of great blues artists that were not necessarily even in Guitar for the Practicing Musician magazine.
Okay.
Uh, people like Albert King, Joe Bonamassa, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and yeah, I think you should try to get. I mean, get your tapes digitized because there's still an audience for everything that you have. There's I feel like the stock is going up for all the players of the classic era. People still want to know all the stuff. There's new players every year that want to know the history, that want to know stuff. We've passed through the trough of '95 to like 2010 now, and there's so many young players out there. I'm just amazed to see people like Sarah Longfield, Yvette Young, Polyphia. They just keep coming out, and it's just interesting to see that there's not a central nexus community place for them. Like that would have been where Guitar for the Practicing Musician would come in very handy to hear. Like here's the next cool player that's doing something interesting that people hadn't thought of. So I just want to say thank you, John Stix, for all the years of magazines and just providing a community and providing a place for young players to go who want to explore, who want to learn how to do, whether it's songwriting or whether it's shredding or whatever. There's a magazine there ready to help. It was invaluable for me. It was invaluable for so many players. And I can't tell you how many times I run into somebody that like will talk about, oh my God, I remember the Guitar for the Practicing Musician, which by the way is really hard to say quickly. I have to stop and slow down and say Guitar for the Practicing Musician. It is tricky. But thank you, John Stix. Well, I'm going to talk to you more later, but I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks again.
Sure.